How could you forget something so basic? Clara, Emily would never be so careless. Beatrice's sharp tone cut through the soft hum of the kitchen fan, her words wrapping around me like a noose. I paused mid-stir, gripping the wooden spoon tighter as my chest tightened. The pot of soup simmered on the stove, its aroma filling the air, but all I could smell was the bitterness in her words. My name is Clara Mason. I'm 32, a nurse, and for the past 3 weeks, the caregiver to my recovering mother-in-law. When Beatrice had surgery last month, I moved into her house, balancing my shifts at the hospital with endless nights by her side. I wanted to help, not out of obligation, but because it felt like the right thing to do. I hoped it might soften the years of cold distance between us, but no matter how much I tried, it seemed my efforts were always invisible, overshadowed by Emily, her perfect daughter who breezed in once a week, smiling for the camera before leaving just as quickly. I didn't know how to respond. My throat felt dry, and the words I wanted to say caught like thorns in my chest. Beatrice turned back to the table, muttering something under her breath, her disapproval settling over the room like a heavy fog. Emily, of course, was nowhere to be found. She was already running late for her weekly appearance, and yet Beatrice spoke of her as if she were the one standing here, ladle in hand, taking care of her every need. Careless. That word felt like a knife twisting in my stomach. I had given up everything for the past 3 weeks, canceled plans, traded shifts, even missed my anniversary dinner with Ben. All to be here. And for what? To be labeled careless because I hadn't added enough salt to the soup. Meanwhile, Emily could float in for an hour, snap a selfie by Beatrice's bedside, and walk out with all the credit. I stared into the pot, my hand trembling slightly as I stirred. Anger began to simmer, bubbling just below the surface. It wasn't just Beatrice's words. It was the smugness Emily exuded in every moment of her carefully orchestrated visits. She knew exactly how to frame herself as the devoted daughter, and she knew I wouldn't fight back. At least not until now. Just as I opened my mouth to defend myself, the front door creaked open, and Emily strolled in, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "Smells good in here," she chirped, holding a bouquet of flowers in one hand and her phone in the other, as though she'd just dropped by to brighten everyone's day. She glanced at me briefly, her smile lingering a second too long, then turned her attention to Beatrice. "How's my favorite patient today?" she cooed, leaning down to kiss her mother on the cheek. Beatrice's face lit up, her earlier frustration with me vanishing like a puff of smoke. "Emily, sweetheart, you're just in time. I was telling Clara how important it is to pay attention to the little things." Not that she'd understand, she added with a pointed glance in my direction. Emily set the flowers on the counter and let out a soft laugh. "Oh, Mom, I'm sure Clara's doing her best," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. She turned to me, her expression unreadable. "Don't worry, Clara, taking care of Mom isn't easy. I've been learning that myself." I clenched my jaw, the words hanging on the tip of my tongue, begging to be said. But Emily was already moving, pulling her phone out for what I knew was coming next. She posed next to Beatrice, leaning in with a radiant smile as her camera clicked. "Just want to capture these precious moments," she said, her voice light, as if she hadn't just stolen the spotlight from everything I'd been working tirelessly to hold together. As Emily scrolled through her phone, probably selecting the best filter to enhance her devoted daughter persona, Beatrice sighed contentedly. "It's so nice to have both my girls here," she said, her gaze lingering on Emily. Though I'll admit, Emily always knows just how to make me feel special. My grip tightened on the ladle, the weight of her words pressing down on me. Both her girls. Special? I had spent the last 3 nights waking up every 2 hours to help Beatrice shift positions, prepare her medication, and ensure she was comfortable. Meanwhile, Emily's contribution amounted to curated snapshots and vague reassurances that she was always thinking of Mom. Mom, Emily began, her tone casually breezy. I was actually thinking of bringing you that herbal tea you love next week. You know, the one from that little shop downtown. It's just been so busy at work, but I'll make time. Oh, Emily, that sounds wonderful. Beatrice exclaimed, her eyes practically glowing with pride. You're always so thoughtful. I couldn't stop myself this time. Thoughtful? I blurted, my voice sharper than I intended. Both Beatrice and Emily turned to me, Beatrice's brows knitting together in confusion. She drops by once a week to take a few photos and then disappears. I've been here every single day doing everything I can to make sure you're comfortable. Emily's smile didn't falter. If anything, it grew wider, but her eyes flashed with something colder. Clara, she said, her voice calm and measured, I didn't realize this was a competition. We're all doing our part in our own way. Some more than others, I muttered under my breath, turning back to the stove. I could feel the tension in the room shift, but I wasn't about to let her patronizing tone get the last word. The moment the words left my mouth, regret washed over me. Even though I was right, I hated that I'd let my frustration spill over, that I'd stooped to making it sound like I was keeping score. It wasn't who I wanted to be, no matter how unfair things felt. Later that evening, I slipped into the guest room, shutting the door quietly behind me. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my phone already in my hand. Ben picked up on the second ring, his voice warm but distracted. Hey, everything okay? No, I said, the word tumbling out before I could stop it. I'm exhausted, Ben. I've been doing everything for your mom. Everything. And she doesn't even notice. Emily walks in for 10 minutes with flowers and a fake smile, and suddenly she's the perfect daughter. Ben sighed heavily on the other end, the sound crackling through the speaker. Clara, you know how my mom is. She's always been like this. You can't take it personally. I know she's like this. I snapped, my voice sharper than I meant. But that doesn't make it easier. Do you have any idea what it feels like to be here day in and day out and still be invisible? I stopped, swallowing the lump in my throat. I just needed you to understand. Ben's voice softened, a hint of concern cutting through his usual practicality. Clara, maybe it's time to take a break. You've done more than enough. You've done everything, honestly. Why don't you come home for a week? Let Emily step up for once. I miss you, and you need to take care of yourself too. His words caught me off guard, the knot in my chest loosening slightly. The thought of going home, of sleeping in my own bed, and being with Ben, was so tempting it almost hurt. But then I thought of Beatrice, her frailty, her stubbornness, and the nagging guilt in my stomach returned. I don't know, I said quietly. What if she needs me? She'll manage, Ben said firmly. You've been more than generous, Clara. It's okay to step back. You're not a bad person for putting yourself first for once. Ben and I lived 2 hours away in a small apartment we'd made our home over the last 5 years. When Beatrice's surgery was scheduled, I'd offered to move in temporarily to help with her recovery. Ben had wanted to be there too. He adored his mom despite her quirks, but his job was at a critical point with deadlines he couldn't ignore. He called every day to check in, always asking how I was holding up, but I knew it weighed on him that he couldn't be here to share the burden. As much as I missed him, I couldn't blame him. He was doing the best he could, just like I was. I sighed, gripping the phone a little tighter. I don't know, Ben, I said finally. It's not that I don't want to come home. I do. I miss you and I'm exhausted. But I can't just leave her like this. She still needs someone here. There was a brief silence on the other end before Ben spoke again, his voice calm but firm. I get it, Clara. You care about her even if she doesn't always show it. Just think about it, okay? You've done so much already. It's not selfish to take care of yourself too. I'll think about it, I said quietly, my throat tightening. I promise. It felt like the right thing to say, even though I wasn't sure if I could really let myself walk away. The next morning, I found Beatrice in the living room, sitting upright in her chair with the television on low. She didn't look up as I entered, her attention fixed on a weather report. I hesitated, wondering if I should start the conversation with a simple good morning, but before I could speak, she turned to me with a pointed look. Clara, she said, her tone already laced with irritation. I couldn't help but notice how late dinner was last night. It's not good for my digestion to eat that late, you know? I blinked, taken aback. Dinner was ready as soon as Emily left. I thought we agreed. Yes, because you didn't have it prepared earlier, she interrupted, her words sharp. When Emily is here, everything feels more put together. She doesn't need to be told what to do. I clenched my hands at my sides, biting back the words I wanted to say. Emily stayed for less than an hour, I replied carefully. She didn't even stay for dinner. That's not the point, Beatrice snapped, leaning forward slightly. Emily knows how to handle herself. She doesn't wait for me to tell her when or how to do things. She's considerate. I let out a slow breath, trying to keep my composure. I've been here every day, Beatrice. I've been doing everything I can to make sure you're comfortable. And yet somehow it always feels like a struggle, she shot back, her voice growing colder. You're here physically, Clara, but emotionally you're checked out. You don't seem like you actually want to be here. Her words struck like a blow, my chest tightening. That's not fair, I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts to stay calm. I've put my life on hold to be here for you. I've been sacrificing? She cut in, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Oh, how noble of you. If it's such a burden, Clara, maybe you should have just let Emily handle it. She's busy, yes. But at least she doesn't make me feel like I'm an inconvenience. I opened my mouth, then closed it, unsure of how to respond. The hurt and anger bubbled inside me, but I knew saying anything more would only make it worse. Instead, I straightened, my voice quiet but firm. I'm doing my best, Beatrice. I'm sorry if that's not enough. She waved a hand dismissively, turning back to the television. Your best isn't what I need, Clara. Emily understands me in ways you never will. The room felt suffocating, her words hanging in the air like smoke. Without another word, I turned and left, retreating to the guest room to collect myself. Tears pricked at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not in front of her. Sitting on the edge of the guest bed, I stared at the neatly folded clothes in my suitcase, my thoughts swirling. Beatrice's words replayed in my mind, each one digging deeper into the ache that had been building for weeks. No matter how much I gave, how much I tried, it was never enough. And it never would be. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my messages, landing on the last one from Ben. You've done enough, Clara. Please come home. The words felt heavier now, but they also carried a clarity I hadn't wanted to admit before. Ben was right. I had done enough. I'd given up my time, my energy, and my peace of mind to be here, hoping it might make a difference. But nothing I did would ever compare to the pedestal Beatrice had placed Emily on. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for someone who didn't see me, who didn't value what I was giving. I let out a shaky breath, wiping the tears that threatened to spill. It wasn't about giving up. It was about knowing when I'd reached my limit. For my own sanity, I had to stop waiting for Beatrice's approval. I had to go home. I decided to talk to Beatrice that afternoon. The air between us was thick, heavy with everything that had been left unsaid. My heart pounded as I stepped forward, determined to finally speak my mind. "Beatrice," I began, my voice steady but soft, "I need to talk to you." She glanced up briefly, her expression unreadable. "If this is about dinner tonight, I'd rather you focus on getting it right than wasting time chatting." My jaw tightened, but I pushed through. "No, it's not about dinner. It's about how I've been treated since I got here." Her hand froze mid-stir, and she finally looked at me, one eyebrow arched. "Oh, and how exactly have you been treated, Clara?" I took a deep breath, the words spilling out before I could second-guess myself. "I've been here every day, doing everything I can to take care of you. I've rearranged my life, missed important moments, and given you all of my energy. And yet, no matter what I do, it's never enough. You've made it clear time and time again that you don't value me, and honestly, I'm tired of being treated like I'm worthless." She set her spoon down with a deliberate clink, folding her hands in front of her. "Well," she said coolly, "if you're tired, Clara, no one's forcing you to stay. Frankly, Emily would do a much better job anyway. She always has." Her words stung sharper than I'd expected, but I refused to let her see how much they hurt. "Emily isn't here, Beatrice," I said, my voice firmer now. "She's never here for more than an hour or two. I've been the one taking care of you. But if you think she can do better, then fine. I'm done." Beatrice didn't flinch, her expression hard as stone. "Good," she said with disdain. "I won't miss the complaining. At least Emily knows how to show respect." I nodded slowly, the finality of her words settling over me like a cold weight. "I hope she can give you what you need," I said quietly, "because I won't be back." Without waiting for her response, I turned and walked away, my chest tight, but my head held high. It was over. I was done. Back in the guest room, I packed my things with quiet determination. Each folded piece of clothing felt like another weight lifted off my shoulders. Beatrice's cutting words still rang in my ears, but I shoved them aside. It was over. I was done bending myself into knots for someone who didn't value me. Once everything was packed, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my phone. My thumb hovered over Emily's number before I pressed call. The line rang several times before she finally picked up. "What is it, Clara?" Emily answered, her tone clipped and impatient. "I'm kind of busy right now." I took a deep breath, refusing to let her attitude get to me. "I'm leaving," I said simply. "I've packed my things and I'm heading home. Beatrice needs someone here, so congratulations, you're up." "What?" she snapped, her voice immediately rising. "Wait, what are you talking about? You can't just leave." "I can and I am," I said firmly. "I've done my part, Emily. It's your turn now." She let out a high-pitched laugh, the kind that came more from disbelief than amusement. "Oh, sure, just drop everything on me. Why don't you? Do you have any idea how busy I am? I can't just. I've been here for weeks." I cut in, my voice steady. "You've had time to prepare for this. Mom's your responsibility too, and she seems to think you're better at this anyway. I'm sure you'll figure it out." Are you kidding me? Emily shrieked, her tone growing more frantic. I don't have time to babysit her. That's your thing, Clara. You're the caretaker, not me. Not anymore, I said, my voice cold. Good luck, Emily. Before she could respond, I hung up, exhaling a shaky breath. I stood, grabbed my suitcase, and headed for the door. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. It was time to leave. 4 days had passed since I left, and I had tried my best not to think about what might be happening back at Beatrice's house. But when my phone buzzed late that evening, I saw her name flashing on the screen. A part of me wanted to ignore it, but curiosity, and maybe a bit of guilt, got the better of me. I picked up. Hello? I said cautiously. Clara? Beatrice's voice came through, shaky and strained. She sounded different. Tired, maybe even desperate. I need to talk to you. I hesitated, unsure of what to say. Is everything okay? No, she admitted, the word heavy with frustration and something else I couldn't quite place. Emily hasn't been here since you left. She's barely answering my calls, and when she does, she has some excuse about work or being too busy. She promised me she'd be here. I bit my lip, resisting the urge to say, I told you so. Instead, I stayed quiet, letting her vent. I've had to do everything on my own, Beatrice continued, her voice trembling. I can't even manage the stairs some days. I don't know what to do, Clara. I feel completely abandoned. Her words hit harder than I expected, stirring a mixture of emotions, sympathy, vindication, and a lingering ache of resentment. She had treated me like I was nothing, and now she was realizing what it meant to truly feel alone. I'm sorry to hear that, Beatrice, I said finally, my tone neutral. But I warned you this might happen. Emily's good at saying the right things, but she's never been the one to follow through. There was a long pause, and for the first time, Beatrice's voice softened. I didn't think she'd just leave me like this. I thought she cared. I stayed silent, not wanting to twist the knife. Beatrice was finally feeling the consequences of her favoritism, and while a small part of me felt justified, another part of me couldn't help but feel sorry for her. I took a deep breath, clutching the phone tightly. Beatrice, I'm sorry you're feeling this way. I wouldn't wish this on anyone, I began, my voice quiet but steady. But I can't just come back. Not right now. What do you mean, not right now? She snapped, her tone immediately sharp. I mean I can't drop everything again to move back in, I said firmly, though my heart ached as I spoke. Beatrice, you treated me like I was nothing when I was there. I gave everything I could, and you made me feel like I didn't matter. I can't put myself through that again. Her response was immediate and furious. Oh, so now you're going to hold a grudge, are you? She yelled, her voice rising. You think you're so perfect, Clara. You think I didn't notice the mistakes you made while you were here. Don't act like you're some martyr. You've never been good enough for this family, and now you're proving it. Her words hit like a slap, but I kept my voice calm. Beatrice, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I know I made mistakes. But I tried. I gave everything I had, and you never saw that. And now, after everything, you expect me to come back as if none of that happened. She let out a bitter laugh, her tone dripping with anger. I should have known. You're just like everyone else. Selfish. At least Emily would never abandon me like this. Emily already has, I said quietly, the words hanging in the air. There was a stunned silence on the other end before she exploded again. Don't you dare talk about Emily like that. She has her reasons, unlike you, who's just looking for an excuse to quit. Tears welled in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I'm sorry you feel that way, Beatrice, but I can't come back, not like this. Before she could yell more, I ended the call, my hands trembling. The weight of her words sat heavy on my chest, but I knew I couldn't go back. Not now, and maybe not ever. 5 days passed, and I tried to move on, pushing the memories of Beatrice's anger to the back of my mind. I was starting to feel a sense of peace again, though it was fragile, held together by long walks and conversations with Ben. Then, late in the evening, my phone buzzed. It was her. I stared at the screen for a moment, debating whether to answer. With a deep breath, I picked up. "Hello? Clara?" Beatrice's voice broke on the other end, shaky and filled with tears. "Clara, I'm so sorry." Her sobs were raw, her words tumbling out in fragments. I don't know what to say. I've been sitting here thinking about everything, and I can't believe how awful I was to you. You didn't deserve any of it. I don't even know why I acted like that. You gave so much and I threw it back in your face. I sat down stunned. "Beatrice," I started, but she cut me off. "No, let me finish," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I've been so unfair to you, Clara, so blind. You didn't have to come here, but you did. You took care of me when no one else would, and I treated you so terribly." Her sobs deepened, and my chest tightened. "I regret it so much," she choked out. "Emily hasn't been here in days, and now I see it. I see what you were saying all along. I need you to know how sorry I am. I didn't deserve your kindness, but you gave it anyway." Tears pricked at my eyes, her sincerity cutting through the pain I'd been carrying. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Thank you, Beatrice," I said softly. "That means more than you know." "I don't expect you to forgive me," she whispered, her voice cracking, "but I had to tell you. I'm so sorry." I sat in silence for a moment, letting her words sink in. "I'll need time," I said finally, my voice gentle but firm. "But I appreciate your apology. It's a start." "It is," she said, her sobs quieting. "I'll try to do better, Clara. I promise." When the call ended, I set the phone down, my heart heavy but lighter all at once. For the first time, it felt like there was a path forward, however slow it might be. After Beatrice recovered, everything was different. She treated me with kindness and gratitude, her sharp edges replaced by genuine warmth. Each visit was lighter, filled with moments of connection instead of tension. Beatrice went out of her way to show her appreciation, and while the past couldn't be erased, it no longer weighed us down. For the first time, I felt truly valued, and that made all the difference.